I'm Soraya. My brother thought it would be hilarious to push me onto a train going nowhere, just to see if I'd break. What started as a prank turned into something darker. My lease got canceled. My name was tied to fake debt. Old friends turned on me. And my own mother? She called in the middle of the night, not to help, but to guilt me into silence. They didn't just abandon me, they set me up to fall. But I didn't fall the way they hoped. I should have known better. I was sitting on the edge of my mattress, barely a bed, more like a cushion with a grudge, when the message lit up my phone. It was from Theron. "Let's start over," he wrote. Attached was a screenshot of a train ticket to Vegas. Round trip, paid for. "One weekend," the caption read. No drama, just us. Reset? I stared at the screen for a long time. He hadn't texted me in nearly 7 months. Not after the last fight, not after I blocked him on everything. But Theron had a way of slipping through cracks I didn't even know I had. He was always like that, charming in a greasy way. If the devil ran a used car lot, he'd look like my brother. Still, the words reset and just us pulled at something old in me. Some dusty, battered hope I didn't even realize was still breathing. My stomach told me no. My heart? It just wanted a break. So I said yes. The station was packed when I got there. Dusk in Phoenix meant blinding orange skies, sagging heat, and the smell of dust and asphalt. I clutched my duffel bag like it was the last piece of me that made sense. Inside, 2 t-shirts, a change of jeans, travel-size deodorant, and that hopeful corner of me still stupid enough to believe this might be real. I waited. He was late. Of course he was. Theron didn't believe in time unless it benefited him. When he finally showed, he was all smiles and fake affection. "You clean up all right," he said, giving me that once-over look I hated. His arms were behind his back, like he had a magic trick lined up. "You're gonna love this ride," he said. "Feels like a movie or something." I didn't answer, just kept my eyes on the boarding sign. Vegas, 7:03 p.m., Gate B4. They called final boarding. He stepped in, pulled me into a hug, and just as I felt the shift in his weight, I knew. Too late. He pushed me, literally shoved me into the train as the doors hissed shut. I stumbled, landed on one knee, my duffel half flung. The train jolted forward, and I grabbed the metal bar for balance, breath caught in my throat. I spun around. He was outside, grinning like a damn fool. He waved. Then he turned and walked away. No signal, no Wi-Fi, just a phone blinking, no service, and a growing sense of dread curling in my gut. I pressed my face against the window. The platform disappeared behind us. I checked the digital map inside the train. We weren't going to Vegas. We were heading south, to Tucson. I blinked. Thought maybe I misread. I refreshed the ticket PDF on my phone. The departure time was correct. The destination wasn't. The ticket wasn't round trip. It wasn't even real. It was a one-way to nowhere. I tried texting Theron. Nothing. I called. Straight to voicemail. Then the screen lit up. "Let's see how far you get this time, sis." I felt it in my chest, like something cracked open. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the train and a high-pitched silence in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. It was a game. And I'd just been made the punchline again. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass, tried not to cry. God, I hated him. But what really burned was that I hated myself more, for believing even for a second that he'd changed. I called Mom. No answer. Of course not. They were probably all sitting around the kitchen table laughing about it. Varric with his whiskey, Isolde pretending not to laugh too loud because she was trying to be neutral. That was her favorite line. Neutral while I drowned. A man in a plaid shirt sitting across the aisle leaned over. His eyes looked kind, but tired. He asked, "You okay?" "You look like you just lost your whole life." I gave him a crooked smile. Maybe I just did. He didn't say anything after that, just nodded slowly, like he knew that kind of loss himself, then turned back to his crossword. I stared out the window for the rest of the ride, watching the desert swallow the horizon. Tucson. When the train hissed to a stop, I stepped off like someone waking from a dream they hadn't asked to have. The platform was smaller, older, no flashy signs, just dust, peeling benches, and the dry heat clinging to my skin like a second betrayal. I walked into the station, found the nearest ticket kiosk, and tried to book the next train back to Phoenix. The screen blinked. Transaction declined. I tried again, with my debit card. Card flagged. Please contact your bank. My throat went dry. I called my landlord, hoping to buy a few hours, lie a little, say I was stuck, that I'd be back tonight. She didn't even let me finish. Ms. Whitmore, we've already changed the locks. What? I felt my legs wobble. We were informed you had behavioral issues, mental health concerns. It's a liability now. Behavioral issues? My voice cracked. Who told you that? She hung up. That apartment was barely a step above a shoebox, but it was mine. The first place I'd signed for on my own. I remembered scrubbing mildew off the ceiling with bleach and a towel and thinking, this is what independence smells like. Gone. Just like that. I didn't need to guess who had called her. Varick used to say stuff like that all the time. Don't listen to her, she's always been unstable. He'd say it in front of neighbors, waitresses, even teachers. It was his favorite trick, make people question my mind, and they'd never listen to my words. And Theron? He just watched and laughed. Always the golden boy. It's just a joke, chill. He'd whisper, whenever things went too far. I sat on the curb outside the station and took inventory. $28, a dead phone, a bag full of cheap clothes, and no address to return to. I found a diner that never closed and bought the cheapest coffee they had. Burnt, watery, no refills. I stayed for hours pretending to scroll through a phone that wouldn't turn on. When I nodded off, a busboy tapped my shoulder. You can't sleep here, he mumbled. I left. Spent the night on a bench behind the building. Woke up stiff, sore, and humiliated. The second night, same routine. On day 3, I walked into a temp agency. The woman behind the counter gave me a look like she already knew me. Sorry, we're not hiring walk-ins, she said. I blinked. Your sign says otherwise. She leaned in, lowered her voice. Look, I saw the post. I don't know what you did back in Phoenix, but I don't want drama in my office. I left. On the street, a man brushed past me and muttered, Trash always finds its way south. I almost chased after him, almost screamed, What the hell do you even know about me? But I didn't. What was the point? Later, I sat at a bus stop watching a family across the street, Dad lifting a toddler in the air, Mom laughing, the baby squealing with joy. I used to think I could build something like that. A life. A family. Stability. Then again, what did I know? I pulled out my phone again. Useless. Thought about calling Isolde. Maybe she'd listen. Maybe, for once, she'd pick me over him. Instead, I scrolled to her number and hit delete. She made her choice a long time ago. I remember being 9, kneeling on rice in the kitchen because Theron had blamed me for breaking the microwave. I hadn't even touched it. Isolde walked in, saw the tears in my eyes, and said, Just apologize so this can end. Like peace was more important than truth. She'd been doing it my whole life, choosing the peace of silence over the pain of accountability, and I was done paying for that. As the sun dipped low, casting Tucson in bruised shades of orange and gray, I felt the weight of it all settle into my bones. My feet ached, my stomach growled, and I had nothing left to lose. I whispered it aloud just to hear the words outside my own head. You can sleep on a bench, you can walk back, but you're never calling them again. The words echoed like a vow in my head as I walked the quiet streets of Tucson at sunrise. My feet were blistered, my lips cracked, and I'd slept sitting upright on a metal bench with a plastic bag for a pillow. I wasn't sure what hurt worse, my back or my pride. 3 days in, I finally caught a break. A little cafe on the corner of 4th and Congress was hiring. It had a crooked open sign and a chalkboard menu out front with words like homemade and family-owned scribbled in curly white lettering. I walked in smelling like sweat and defeat. The owner, a woman named Denise, looked me over with that mixture of curiosity and caution people reserve for strays. She asked one question, "You good with early mornings?" I nodded so hard I made myself dizzy. They gave me a chance. Not much, 4 hours a day clearing tables and restocking creamer. But it was something. I overcompensated by saying yes ma'am too often and wiping the counters 3 times more than needed. I kept my sleeves down to hide the bruises on my arms from sleeping on concrete. I smiled too much. Polite, sweet, invisible. But invisibility doesn't last. A week in, things changed. Customers whispered as I passed. A group of college kids stared openly at me one morning, then burst into laughter when I dropped a glass. I tried to brush it off, but something was off. Mid-shift, my coworker Lily tugged me into the back and showed me her phone. A Facebook post. Local community group. My photo, cropped from a staff pic at the last diner I worked in Phoenix. Caption, warning, this girl stole tips from coworkers and walked out mid-shift. Now she's moved to Tucson. Heads up! Below it, hundreds of comments. She looks like the type. Karma's got a name. Anonymous source, of course. But I knew. The timing, the tone, the digital fingerprints. It was Theron. He always found a way to leave bruises without lifting a hand. I felt the floor shift under me. Lily's face was unreadable. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Later that day, Denise pulled me aside. "Look," she said carefully, "we've been getting calls. Some folks think you bring drama." I wanted to scream, to cry, to tell her that my brother was a sociopath who thought humiliation was a hobby. But all I could say was, "It's not true." She nodded like she believed me. But when I clocked out, she avoided my eyes. The tips dried up. Customers stopped talking to me. One man, middle-aged khaki shorts, probably a dad, slipped a note onto the table I'd just cleaned. "Trash doesn't belong here." I tore it up before Denise could see. That night, I stayed late wiping the same damn table until the wood blurred beneath the cloth. I thought maybe if I kept scrubbing, I could erase myself from the narrative. My thoughts spiraled. This isn't survival. This is a slow execution in front of an audience that already thinks you're guilty. Flashback hit me like a punch. 8th grade, when Theron blamed a kid for stealing his iPod. I knew the truth. I tried to speak up. The teacher waved me off. "Don't be dramatic, Soraya." Theron winked at me as the kid cried in detention. Liars speak louder. I stayed late again the next day, hoping my effort could outshine the shadow he'd cast. But I could feel it in the way people looked through me. Then came the final gut punch. A TikTok clip. Someone had recorded me in the cafe, wiping tables in silence while customers stared. The caption, "She looks guilty AF." It had 500,000 views. A stranger from New Mexico commented, "She's a menace. I heard she scammed Yvette's family." Another said, "Hope she rots." I deleted all my social media accounts, burned them to digital ash. That night, I didn't cry from anger. I cried because no one would ever care enough to ask for the truth. Sitting in the dark, knees hugged to my chest, I whispered into the empty room, "If I disappear, I wonder how long it would take anyone to notice." Turns out, not long at all. The next morning, I found an envelope shoved under the door at the cafe. It wasn't from the landlord, or a customer, or anyone with good intentions. It was stiff, official-looking, red stamp, urgent financial notice. My stomach twisted. Back at the shelter where I was crashing, an old converted church near downtown, I opened it with fingers that didn't want to move. My name was at the top of the page. Full legal. Social security number matched. Loan account ending in 4417. Amount $20,000. Reason, personal loan. Cosigner, left blank. My signature was at the bottom, except it wasn't mine. I stared at it so long my eyes blurred. Not because I didn't recognize it, but because I did. That swooping S, the curved W in Whitmore. Someone had studied me, practiced, planned, and there was only one person in my life with that much audacity and zero remorse. Theron. I sat down on the edge of the cot and tried to catch my breath. 20,000. I didn't even make that much in a year. I called the loan company, voice flat, pretending I'd just come across the paperwork and wanted to confirm a few details. The woman on the phone was polite enough, until she heard my last name. Oh yes, you're the primary. Your brother Theron was listed as the cosigner. He mentioned you might call. Mentioned I might call. I didn't even hang up. I just let the line go dead in my hand, like it could carry the weight of my rage. They never stop. It wasn't the money. It was the entitlement, the gall. The way they still thought I was some fallback plan, some stupid girl too scared to fight back. I could hear Varick's voice in my head, clear as day. That one. She's got a loud mouth, but a quiet bite. I went to the legal aid office near campus that afternoon. Fluorescent lighting, peeling posters about tenant rights. The woman behind the glass didn't even glance up when I walked in. Proving fraud in a family case is hard, she muttered. Especially if they've used your info before. You sure you want to open that door? Number. But it was already open. She handed me a form and told me not to expect miracles. I left, form in hand, heart pounding, hands shaking. Flashback slammed into me. A backyard cookout years ago. I was maybe 23. Theron spilled a drink on the grill, nearly set the deck on fire. Varick laughed, slapped his back, then looked at me and said, Bet your sister'll clean this up too. She always does. And I had. Every time. Back in the shelter, I grabbed my notebook, started writing, not feelings, facts, dates, text, fake job references, sketchy charges on my old credit card. I pulled out screenshots from cloud backups, saved voicemails, every receipt I hadn't already burned. I created a spreadsheet with color-coded tabs like I was building a case file. Because I was. This wasn't just a bad family dynamic anymore. It was a blueprint for destruction. I whispered it to myself as I typed, If I can't escape them, I'll expose them. Later that night, I called Theron's burner. He didn't pick up. He never does when he knows he's guilty. So I left a message. You forged my name. That's a felony. You want war? You got it. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I sounded like someone already planning the funeral of what used to be called family. Afterward, I walked 3 miles to my old storage unit, the one I hadn't touched since Phoenix, and changed the locks. Opened a new bank account, froze my credit. Deleted every shared connection on Venmo, LinkedIn, even my email contacts. Then I opened my journal and wrote one line across the top of the page. They won't just lose access. They'll lose me completely. I remember writing it like a promise, not a threat, not even a declaration, just a truth that had taken years to crawl into my bones. So when my phone lit up at 12:41 a.m., with a blocked number, I should have let it ring, should have tossed it across the room and rolled over. But I didn't. I answered. And there she was. Sweetheart, Isolde's voice cracked. I know what Theron did, but don't make this worse, please. Her words came slow, trembled around the edges. She sounded older than I remembered, softer. Like the mother who used to rub aloe on my sunburns, who whispered lullabies when I had night terrors, who told me, You're safe, you're safe, you're safe. But she hadn't said that in years. Now her voice was doing a different dance, not soothing, strategic. I could hear the shaking, but I couldn't tell if it was sorrow or performance. She inhaled sharply. I don't sleep, Soraya. I worry every night. Your brother, he's not like you. He's fragile. You've always been the strong one. There it was. That old story. That poisoned compliment. She cried then. I heard it. The hitch in her breath. The wet swallow. And for a second, I believed it. But then came the twist. If you go through with this, he'll break. Is that what you want? To see him shattered? You know he's not built like you. My chest burned. That was the script. That was always the script. I was the strong one. The one who held it in. The one who got good grades, stayed quiet, patched holes, while Theron set fires and got sympathy. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I was 12 again. It was summer. A window had shattered in the neighbor's garage. Theron and I stood side by side in the kitchen. Varek's face was red. His belt was in his hand. "Who did it?" he barked. I opened my mouth. Theron looked at me, wide-eyed, pathetic, and shook his head like he was 5, not 10. I stepped forward. I did. Later, as I knelt on the bathroom floor, wincing with every breath, Isolde dabbed ointment on my shoulder and whispered, "You're so strong, baby. That's why I knew you'd take it." She kissed my forehead. And that was it. Strength in our family meant endurance. It meant being the shield while the sword kept swinging. Back in my tiny apartment, I walked into the bathroom and stared at myself under the yellow light. Jaw clenched, eyes swollen from sleepless nights. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror, but I respected her. She was done. I grabbed my phone and opened a new message. To a therapist whose number I'd saved but never used. "Hi, I need help sorting out years of damage. When's your next available session?" I hit send. Then I pulled out my journal and started writing. Not about what had happened, but how it had shaped me. I wrote it like evidence, because maybe one day it would be. And somewhere on page 3, I scribbled in all caps, "If being strong means breaking for them, I choose weakness." Then I opened my email and typed out one last message to Isolde. Subject line, "No more." Body. "You can love me without asking me to break for him. If you can't, then maybe you don't know what love is." I hit send. Then I blocked her number. The apartment fell into a silence so complete I could hear the hum of the fridge and the tick of the cheap wall clock. But it didn't feel empty. It felt real, like air after a storm, like truth even when it hurt. The silence feels honest. And that's something. But honesty doesn't last long when you're up against people who thrive on distortion. I woke up to my phone buzzing like it was on fire. Dozens of notifications, ping after ping, DMs, mentions, tagged photos. My stomach twisted before I even unlocked the screen. There it was. A photo of me and Theron, cropped tight, heavily filtered, edited just enough to look like something it wasn't. It was from years ago. A family barbecue, I think. He had his arm around me, but someone had softened the focus, shifted the context, and slapped on a caption designed to destroy. "Some families are closer than they should be." My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled through the comments. Gross. She always looked shady. Knew something was off about her. I stared at the screen, disbelief burning into rage. This wasn't just character assassination. This was a slow public hanging, and they were handing out rope like party favors. And then I saw her name. Demi, an old co-worker from Phoenix, the one who'd once bought me groceries when my debit card declined. She had shared the post, added her own caption. "I hate to share this, but people need to know the truth." I called her. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Demi, please tell me this isn't real." Nothing. The air felt thick. I could barely breathe. I knew what this was. She'd been paid off. Or scared off. Either way, she wasn't standing by me. That afternoon, I showed up to work at the cafe like everything was normal, but it wasn't. People stared. A couple got up and left the moment I brought them menus. Denise, my manager, pulled me into the back. "I don't want to believe any of it," she said gently. "But the posts are getting attention. If this keeps going, corporate might step in. I need to protect the cafe." I nodded. I understood. But it still stung. That night, I didn't cry. I printed. Every screenshot, every lie, every time-stamped message. I dug into my cloud backups, my photo archives, even old voicemail transcriptions. I created a file, labeled it Contingency Plan. I sealed it in an envelope and handed it to Denise before I left. "If anything happens to me," I said quietly, "open this." She didn't ask what was inside. She just nodded, eyes full of something like pity. On the walk home, I stopped at a corner store and used the public Wi-Fi to create a new Instagram account. No name, no bio, just a blank slate and one post, a photo of my journal. Caption: "You think silence means guilt. I've been silent because I was surviving. But you want noise? I've got plenty." I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. I listed dates, blurred receipts, vague references to loans and forged signatures. Enough to make people pause. Enough to plant doubt. The post caught fire. DMs rolled in, some hateful, but some curious. "Wait, is this about that girl from the cafe? Didn't her brother have a record? Things aren't adding up." And just like that, the ground shifted. Then came the message. Theron. His handle was private, but I recognized the profile photo. A blurry shot of his dog from 5 years ago. His message: "Take that post down. You don't want this smoke." I stared at the words, heartbeat steady, controlled, focused. I typed back, "You should have left me off that train." Then, one last line, fingers shaking, but not from fear. "You want war? Here's your first warning shot." I hit send and dropped the phone on the counter like it burned. The next morning came like any other. Eggs crackling on the flat top, the smell of burnt toast, Jalen humming something off-key by the grill. The diner was packed. Tickets fluttered on the rail like white flags, and my hands moved on autopilot, pour, plate, wipe, smile. Until the air changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a crash or scream. It was the kind of silence that feels intentional, that unnatural stillness when people stop chewing just to listen. I looked up, and there they were. Theron, in a pressed black shirt, like he'd come straight from a funeral. Varek, arms folded, jaw locked. And Isolde, pearl earrings, handkerchief in hand, face tilted like she was already the victim. I froze. They didn't walk in. They marched, slow and calculated, like it was a stage, and they were here to deliver a performance. Theron stepped up to the counter and slapped down a folder. "This," he said loudly, "is what betrayal looks like." Varek opened the folder and slid it across. A thick, notarized contract. A $50,000 debt. My name at the top. "She owes this," he said, voice like gravel. "And she thinks she can just run away." I didn't move. Customers turned their heads. Some held phones just low enough to record. Others whispered. Theron kept going. "She's the reason this family's falling apart. We've protected her for years, and this is how she repays us." Isolde dabbed at her eyes like a stage actress trying to win an award. "We're not angry," she said, voice quivering. "We just want closure." I saw a woman in the corner booth mouth the words, "What is going on?" to her husband. I looked at the contract, untouched. Then I looked at them. And I laughed. Not loud. Just a small, tired sound that rose in my throat before I could stop it. I picked up the folder and turned it around. Back to them. "I'm not signing anything," I said. I stepped out from behind the counter, wiped my hands on my apron, and scanned the room. "I know what this looks like, and I know some of you already have opinions." I paused. "But closure doesn't look like a debt. It looks like accountability." I walked toward Jalen and stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder. Closure means you stop showing up at someone's job to humiliate them. Closure means you stop stealing and calling it family. Closure means you leave people alone when they finally leave you. Varek's jaw twitched. Theron hissed, "This isn't over." I just looked at him. "It is for me." They left with the same theatrical slowness, but this time no one clapped. No one stood. The diner stayed quiet until the bell on the door stopped ringing. Jalen didn't say a word. He just handed me a mug of coffee and bumped my shoulder with his. That night, I found a note taped to his windshield. "She's toxic. If you're with her, you'll fall too." Typed. No signature. He showed it to me in silence. My stomach sank. He looked at me, lips pressed into a line. You think I scare that easy? I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. We burned the note in the kitchen sink. I didn't sleep. Instead, I wrote a long post on my burner account. I will not pay for silence. I will not apologize for surviving, and I will not let shame be my inheritance. I hit publish. Then I turned off my phone. They came into my job to end me. Instead, they just told everyone who they really are. 3 days later, I opened my mailbox to find a thick white envelope, hand-delivered. No return address, no stamp. Just my full name printed in sharp black ink like a slap across the face. Inside, a summons. They were suing me. Defamation. 46 pages. Screenshots of my posts. Paragraphs pulled from my burner account. Even a blurry image of my journal from the photo I'd posted. They'd printed it all and handed it to a judge like it was gospel. The envelope trembled in my hand, but I didn't. Instead, I made a call. The legal aid office didn't remember me at first. But when I mentioned my name again, the receptionist's voice shifted, like she was bracing for something bigger than paperwork. An hour later, I was sitting across from a lawyer named Rita. She had short gray hair, square glasses, and eyes that didn't blink often. They want you scared enough to back down, she said, flipping through the documents. They want you quiet. I leaned forward, pulled out my own folder. I brought something too. Her eyebrows raised. I slid it across the table. Loan documents, forged leases, text message threats, screenshots of everything from the fake Facebook posts to the wire transfer receipts I'd traced back to Theron. She turned one page, then another, then another. Finally, she sat back in her chair and exhaled slowly. This won't just be a defense, she said. This'll be a counterattack. By the end of the day, we'd filed our own suit. Identity theft, emotional distress, and harassment. 2 days later, I noticed the gray sedan. It was parked across from the diner when I opened, still there when I locked up. No plates visible from the front. No movement. The first time, I thought it might be coincidence. The second time, I knew better. That week, I started hearing footsteps when I walked home. Always at a distance, never close, never fast. Just enough to raise goosebumps. I reported it to the police. They said, unless there's contact, there's nothing we can do. So I bought pepper spray. And a whistle. And told Jalen everything. He didn't try to talk me out of anything. He just nodded. I checked my voicemail that night. 6 missed calls, all blocked. One message made it through. Distorted voice. Male. Low and glitchy, like it was run through a filter. If you keep pushing this, your past's gonna look like the pretty version. I stared at the phone in my hand like it had teeth. I saved the message, emailed it to Rita, and then deleted it from my phone. I didn't want to hear it again. I whispered, "You're not scaring me. You're confirming everything." The next morning, I stood outside the Phoenix courthouse under a sky that couldn't decide whether it wanted to rain or burn. But the rain won. Rare in this city, cleansing. Jalen held the umbrella between us, his hand steady above my head. He looked down at me, eyes searching mine. "You ready to walk in?" I nodded. "Oh, I've been walking into storms my whole life. Let's go." The courtroom didn't smell like justice. It smelled like old paper and disinfectant, like nerves hiding behind cheap perfume and worn-out suits. But it was quiet. The kind of quiet that means everything is being recorded, and nothing can be taken back. When the verdict came, I didn't cry. Identity fraud confirmed. Harassment substantiated. My counterclaim settled privately. The defamation suit dropped. Varek never showed. Isolde didn't send a single email. Theron sat through one day, jaw clenched like he was trying to chew through shame, then never came back. They just disappeared. No apology, no confrontation, just absence. And for the first time, I didn't chase answers. Weeks passed. The tension I'd carried for years. That coiled wire of always bracing, always flinching, it began to loosen, not vanish, but soften, like muscle finally unclenching. Then one day, while I was clearing dishes at the diner, Delza slid an envelope across the counter. She didn't say anything, just nodded at it and went back to the coffee machine. Inside was a lease agreement, the corner cafe space next door. Empty for months. Too much work, too much rent. Until now. Her handwriting at the bottom. You've outgrown surviving. It's time you started living. I sat with that sentence all night, hands flat on the paper, like it might vanish if I blinked too long. 2 months later, it was mine. The place smelled like drywall and dust at first, like abandonment. But we scrubbed it down, painted over the sadness, hung thrifted light fixtures, and strung up desert succulents. I printed a menu myself on cardstock that curled slightly in the Arizona heat. Brunch was simple: avocado toast, chorizo hash, iced lavender tea. But people came, not out of pity, not out of curiosity. They came because the food was real, because I was. Sometimes I'd catch a customer wiping their mouth and looking around like they weren't just eating, they were breathing easier. That meant something. The sign above the door? Soraya's. Just that. Late one night after closing, I opened my laptop. Just once. Theron's account. Inactive. Isolde's? Still there. Photos of Thanksgiving tablescapes, perfectly frosted birthday cakes, captions like, "Cherish your children, they're your legacy," but never a single photo of me, not one. I closed the tab, didn't sigh, didn't ache, just moved on. If erasing me helps them sleep, fine. I'm not living to be remembered by people who never saw me to begin with. I locked the cafe and found Jalen on the back steps, his apron slung over his shoulder, shirt damp from dishwater and heat. He handed me a glass bottle of Mexican cola, sat beside me. The desert sky blinked with airplane lights and stars trying to outshine them. After a while, he asked quietly, "Would you ever talk to them again?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the empty street. "I think forgiveness isn't required for freedom," I said finally, "and I'm finally free." He nodded, resting his head against the wall beside mine. We sat in the hush of a life that was finally our own. I tilted my face up to the sky, breathing in the dusty air, the sound of traffic 2 streets away, the buzz of a neon sign across the block. "They tried to burn me down," I whispered, "but I used the fire to build something better." Before we wrap this story, I want to leave you with something real. Maybe you've never been pushed onto a literal train and left to figure it out alone. But maybe, just maybe, you know what it feels like to be pushed emotionally, abandoned, betrayed, expected to keep carrying everyone else's weight while they walk away clean. That was my story. And what I've learned is this: family isn't who shares your last name. It's who shows up, who respects your boundaries, who roots for your healing even when it's inconvenient. Survival isn't the end game. Peace is. Ownership of your life is. Your freedom is. Forgiveness is optional. Growth is not. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you once believed you couldn't live without? Did you rebuild from ashes, or are you still sitting in the smoke, wondering when it's okay to finally breathe? I'd love to hear from you. Seriously, if this story spoke to something deep in you, type 1 in the comments, or just let me know where you're watching from. If it rubbed you the wrong way, that's okay too. Tell me why. Every voice counts here. And hey, if this hit you in the heart and you want more stories that speak the truth most people are scared to say out loud, don't forget to subscribe. That little button? It's how we keep going. It's how we keep telling stories that matter. Until next time, own your story. Don't wait for permission.